Well, this took a little over 2 hours last night. Not kidding. And I have no idea how this video is going to do. I don't know anyone's going to watch it. And as you see, it's from 1981 right through to 2019 again. Now, this is a brand new board. So people are like, that seems like a different size board. Yep. Um, it is definitely that. It's 6 inches taller, 4 inches longer than the other boards that I normally use. And I thought, well, this is a good time to use this. So we've always talked about John Druce. John Druce came out of nowhere, scored a bunch of goals in the playoffs 1 year, and then never quite got to that level again. And then we've talked about guys who have struggled in the playoffs. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a John Druce award for each year from 1981 through now, and retroactively announce your John Druce winners. But I want to have an Alexei Yashin award as well for the guy who in the playoffs just didn't get the points. And again, if anybody has a problem with Yashin being listed, well, he's on the board 3 times. So to me, that means it's the Yashin Award. And let's just jump in with the 1981 year, shall we? All right. Steve Payne. Remember him? No? I understand. He was one of my favorites when I was a little kid because he had 19 games played, 17 goals, 12 assists, 29 points in that run to the Stanley Cup Finals for the Minnesota North Stars. He would never score at that pace again. Now, on the low side, so the Yashin winner for that year would be Guy Lafleur, 3 games played and 1 point. So this is, it's going to be a big name player who didn't have the big name stats, and whether it's because the team wasn't good enough or whether it's because of whatever reason, they're on the board anyways. 1982, the John Druce winner that year, Thomas Gradin, 17 games played, 9 goals, 10 assists, 19 points. Gradin was around a point a game player, but that is easily his best playoffs. So playoffs, his totals weren't all that great outside of that year. Now, the Yashin Award that year goes to Grant Fuhr, who had a record of 2-3 and a save percentage of .853 in that first round upset they suffered against the LA Kings. So there you go. 1983, Barry Peterson, the Boston Bruins, wins the John Druce Award, 17 games, 14 goals, 18 assists, 32 points. Everybody focuses on him being traded for Cam Neely and how disastrous it was for Vancouver, and rightfully so, but people forget Barry Peterson was a pretty good forward who scored a lot of points, and he had a pretty good run in 1983. Now, Michel Goulet is on the Yashin side of the board, 4 games played, no points for the Quebec Nordiques. 1984, Dave Semenko. So I had to kind of dig on this one because most of the guys who played really well in the playoffs, I was like, eh. Like Ken Lindsman was fantastic in the playoffs. Ken Lindsman was amazing in the playoffs. And so I couldn't put Lindsman up there. It's like, oh, Lindsman, oh, no, he did do that before and after. Okay. So Dave Semenko, on the other hand, 19 games, 5 goals, the only 5 he scored in his playoff career, 5 assists and 10 points. Not bad for an enforcer, right? Now, on the low side, you got Tim Kerr with 3 games and no points. So again, a team that's out in the first round. The Yashin Award goes to Tim Kerr that year. Players who we know are pretty darn good, and then in the playoffs, it just doesn't happen. Now, Chicago in 1985, you have Daryl Sutter up there for the Blackhawks. 15 games played, 12 goals, 7 assists, 19 points. Not bad, Mr. Sutter. On the low side for St. Louis, Joe Mullen. 3 games played, no points. And it's not the only time we see Mullen on the board. But he also won a cup or two, so it's understandable if every now and then his name comes up on the board. Still the Yashin Award. 1986, Greg Paslowski. Greg Paslowski for the St. Louis Blues, 17 games, 10 goals, 7 assists, 17 points. Yeah, he didn't get near that again. Ray Bourque is on the Yashin side of the board with 3 games played and no points for the Montreal Canadiens beaten Boston Bruins that year. Yeah, Montreal swept him and Bourque had no points. I will never equate that to a lack of effort from Bourque. A lack of results, sure. A team around him that just didn't work, sure. Now, 1987, we see an example of that as well, as we see Ron Francis's name on the board for the first time as the winner of the Yashin Award. 6 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. It was hard to come up with somebody that I thought was a really good performer who had a down playoff that year. I thought Francis stood out. Pelle Eklund, 26 games, 7 goals, 20 assists, 27 points on a Flyers team that went all the way to the finals and pushed Edmonton to the very limit. That's easily the best playoff that Eklund had. That was 1987, so he gets the John Druce Award. 1988, I went with Peter Klima. Peter Klima, the Detroit Red Wings, 12 games, 10 goals, 8 assists, 18 points. I loved Klima that year. And then his work ethic was kind of why that love would change by the time 1990 came around. Brian Druce stands out with 6 games, no points, and a -9 in a first-round loss for the Islanders in 1988. Druce goes from an absolute hero in 83 to, the offense was gone by that point. And, of course, he would move on and play for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he would adapt his game and become a really solid bottom 6 forward. So, there you go. 1989, it is Chris Kontos, the original John Druce. 11 games, 9 goals, no assists. He doesn't need to pass the puck. Kontos was a star after that run. And then, I remember when his hockey cards were coming out, he was like, I got a Chris Kontos. And I was like, I don't care. You're right, man. He's going to be great. He's Chris Kontos. He's not. But Ron Francis ends up on the board for the second time, again, for the Whalers. 4 games, 2 assists for Francis. You can make the argument that the Whalers, the team wasn't very good at that point, and you'd be right. So, 1990, and there's John Druce winning his own award. 15 games, 14 goals, 3 assists, 17 points. On the Yashin side of it, you've got the Calgary Flames. Gary Suter, 6 games and 1 assist. Now, in the Chris Kontos season, I forgot to mention, Al MacInnis gets an honorable mention. He had a Conn Smythe season to remember, but MacInnis was pretty good in general, and I thought, Kontos is more of a standout than MacInnis. It wasn't really a surprise that MacInnis was great. It was a surprise with Kontos. Just like it was a surprise with Druce getting 14 goals in 15 games in the playoffs. Now, Minnesota in 1991 made a run to the Stanley Cup Finals. Dave Gagne was a big part of that. 23 games played, 12 goals, 15 assists, 27 points for him. Now, on the low side, you've got the Calgary Flames, Dougie Gilmour, 7 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. So Gilmour would be moved on to Toronto, but his time in Calgary was winding down without a whole lot of fanfare anyways before that. 1992, former Kid Line member Joe Murphy gets on the board. Joe Murphy ends up with the award that year. 16 games, 8 goals, 16 assists, 24 points. That's the guy that was drafted number 1 overall by Detroit, right there. Great run for him. And then on the lower side, Dave Andrechuk for the Buffalo Sabres. 7 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points for the Yashin side of this. Remember, these are not legally binding awards, so there's no need for anybody to get offended with whoever they see on the board. 1993, Thomas Sandstrom for the LA Kings when they went to the finals. 24 games, 8 goals, 17 assists, 25 points. Far and away his best season in the playoffs. Peter Stastny for the Devils is on the Yashin side of it. 5 goals, 2 assists for him. But he was winding down his career as well. 1994, Trevor Linden had the best playoffs any Canuck ever had, I would argue. 24 games, 12 goals, 13 assists, 25 points. He was playing with broken ribs and you name it. Now on the low side, Joe Mullen is up there again, this time for Pittsburgh. 6 games, 1 assist. But again, he'd won himself a couple of Stanley Cup rings in the middle. I'm going to give him a pass on that. 1995, Sergei Fedorov. Now, because the Red Wings and the Devils didn't have anybody who really had a season that far and away above everything else they did in the playoffs. You could mention Claude Lemieux, but Lemieux was pretty good in the playoffs and a key guy the whole way through his career. Fedorov, 17 games, 7 goals, 17 assists, 24 points. Was really his most dynamic playoffs from a scoring perspective. Now, Curtis Joseph for St. Louis stands out with a 3-3 record and an .865 save percentage. .865 is low by Cujo's standards. Cujo would become a fantastic playoff goaltender. This is during the Mike Keenan era, right? So, yeah, that divorce was coming. 1996, the Florida Panthers, they had a team of kind of also-rans, just a team of blue-collar workers. Dave Lowry stood out. 23 games, 10 goals, 7 assists, 17 points for Dave Lowry. Never had anything. Regular season, he might score 17 points. Shane Doan for the Winnipeg Jets. This was their last year in Winnipeg, and Shane Doan played 6 games. No points for him that spring. 1997, Philadelphia Flyers go to the finals. John LeClair, 19 games, 9 goals, 12 assists, 21 points for the John Druce Award. And he did have some key goals along the way in 93 for the Montreal Canadiens, But his overall scoring in those 93 playoffs wasn't anywhere near that level that he had for Philadelphia. Vinny Domfus for the Montreal Canadiens played 5 games in the first round that year. No points for him, and that stood out to me, so Yashin award to him. 1998, Matthew Barnaby for the Buffalo Sabres scored all of his points in his career in that playoff. 15 games, 7 goals, 6 assists, 13 points. Barnaby like, yeah, I could do this. I don't have to be a pest. I could go out there and be a top point producer. Weird. And then on the Boston side, they went out in the first round, and Joe Thornton had no points in 6 games. I remember there was a lot of talk about Thornton being a flop early in his career, and turned out he wasn't. So this is why you don't give up on a rookie, because if you did, then Boston would have just ditched Thornton for very little. They weren't that dumb. Right. So, 1999, Yuri Lehtinen. So, the Dallas Stars win the Stanley Cup, and Lehtinen had some key goals along the way. 23 games, 10 goals, 3 assists, 13 points. Lehtinen was a good player, but that 10 goals, that was something. That was fantastic. And Alexei Yashin makes his first appearance on the board. 4 games for the Senators. No points for him to win his own award. 2000, the award, the John Druce Award, goes to Owen Nolan, who had 10 games played, 8 goals, 2 assists, 10 points. That 8 goals in 10 games was a much better total than he had throughout his career in the playoffs. And on the low side, Peter Bondra for the Washington Capitals had 1 goal and 1 assist for 2 points in 5 games in that first round loss by the Capitals. Remember, to be on the Yashin side of the board, your team has to have been knocked out in the first round. Remember that, because somebody's going to be going through and saying, "Wait, this guy had a bad playoff. Why didn't you talk about him?" It's got to be a first-round knockout. Rob Blake, 2001, 23 games, 6 goals, 13 assists, 19 points for the Colorado Avalanche. Best playoffs he ever had. And on the downside, there's Yashin again, 4 games, 1 assist for the Ottawa Senators. What are you going to do? And he wasn't on this one because I'm pretty sure that's the season he skipped. So, nothing. He skips the season and comes back and gets a point. 2002, Gary Roberts for the Toronto Maple Leafs wins the John Druce Award. 19 games, 7 goals, 12 assists, 19 points. The Yashin Award goes to Jeremy Roenick with the Flyers. 5 games, no points for JR that year. 2003, the John Druce Award goes to Jeff Friesen. Jeff Friesen for the New Jersey Devils. 24 games played, 10 goals, 4 assists, 14 points for Friesen. He never got anywhere near that again in his career. Mike Pekka for the New York Islanders gets the low mark with 0 points in 5 games for the New York Islanders. So, Pekka wins himself the Yashin Award that year. 2004, Freddie Modine for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yep, Freddie Modine. 25 games, 8 goals, 11 assists, 19 points. And then on the low side, Linden ends up winning both. Linden in 2004 had 7 games played for Vancouver and no points in the playoffs that year. And of course, in between 94 and 2004, he had left the team, and it had been an absolute disaster for Vancouver. So the fact they're even in the playoffs in 2004 and Linden's back, it's kind of a victory in and of itself, but he still does get the award. 2006, Fernando Pisani. Remember Pisani? Remember Pisani went on this great run? I remember. 24 games, 14 goals, 4 assists, 18 points. And reminded everybody of John Druce in that run, because they were like, Pisani, really? He got another one? Jaromir Jagr for the Rangers that year played 3 games in the playoffs and had 1 assist in those 3 games. So we're up to 2007. 2007's winner of the John Druce Award is Daniel Alfredsson. 20 games, 14 goals, 8 assists, 22 points. So, pretty good goal scoring for Alfredsson in the playoffs that year. On the low side for the Islanders now, it's Alexei Yashin. 5 games played, no points. So, that's where anybody who might want to argue Yashin deserves more regard, it's the playoffs that killed that for him. Just what did it. 2008, Kronwall. Nicholas Kronwall for the Detroit Red Wings ends up winning the John Druce Award. 22 games, no goals, but 15 assists, which is just crazy better than any other season he had in the playoffs. Brian Gionta gets the Yashin Award. 5 games, 1 goal for the New Jersey Devils in the playoffs that year. 2009, Daniel Cleary of the Detroit Red Wings ends up winning the award for me. Now, I was trying to find a way to get Hornquist's name on the board, but Hornquist's just good in the playoffs. So there's certain guys people are going to go, what about this guy? Go look at their stats before you post that comment, because odds are anybody you're going to talk about, they're probably just really solid in the playoffs. And if they were really solid in the playoffs in general, I wasn't putting them up here, because the idea of the John Druce Award is that guy who's that one really big year in the playoffs. Could be a star player like Alfredson, could be a guy like Dan Cleary. 23 games, 9 goals, 6 assists, 15 points in the 2009 playoffs for him. On the Yashin Award side, Carey Price was 0-4 with an .878 save percentage. So not Carey Price-like numbers. 2010, Mike Camilleri of the Montreal Canadiens wins the award that year. 19 games, 13 goals, 6 assists, 19 points. Pretty strong playoff run. On the downside, on the Yashin side of things, 6 games, 1 goal for Ryan O'Reilly of the Colorado Avalanche. O'Reilly, like Linden, has won both awards. We'll get to O'Reilly later. 2011, Sean Bergenheim. 16 games, 9 goals, 2 assists, 11 points for Tampa. So again, that's the John Druce thing of who? Bergenheim again? Really? And then Kovalov is on the Yashin side of the board. 7 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. Again, towards the end of his career, right? 2012 was the year of Ilya Kovalchuk in the playoffs. Plays 23 games for the Devils in the playoffs. 8 goals, 11 assists, 19 points. Plays a large role in them getting to the Stanley Cup Finals. He was a hero for that summer. He was a hero. On the San Jose side of things, these guys, I have Pavelski and Marleau, both with 0 points in 5 games. So that might be the height of when people were saying Marleau isn't going to win anything. Marleau can't win, which I never thought was fair, but it was still out there for San Jose. 2013, Brian Bickle, the Chicago Blackhawks, 23 games, 9 goals, 8 assists, 17 points, wins the John Druce Award. Like I said, I went through over 2 hours of stats. Because this was just a fun thing. And like Yvonne came in when I was up to about here, and she's like, oh, what are you doing? And I told her, and she's like, oh, that's going to take a long time, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, sorry. But yeah, Bickle, 23 games, 9 goals, 8 assists, 17 points for Chicago. So he gets the John Druce Award. And then the Yashin side of it is Nabokov, who had a 2-4 record with an .842 save percentage for the New York Islanders. Ouch. That's an ouch. And again, Nabokov was towards the end of his career when that happened, so, right? 2014, Marian Gaborik. And I had to look over Gaborik a few times. I know he had a half-decent run with Minnesota, but this one was something better. They win the Stanley Cup. Gaborik, 14 goals in 26 games, 8 assists, 22 points for the LA Kings. And on the Yashin side of it, I had Nyquist with 5 games played and no points. So Gustav Nyquist gets on the board there for the Detroit Red Wings. 2015, Duncan Keith of the Chicago Blackhawks. And I had to go over this one a few times too, because I thought, well, Keith had some. No, this was much better than his other playoffs. Offensively, 23 games, 3 goals, 18 assists, 21 points. And on the low side, on the Yashin side, is Mark Scheifele of the Jets. 4 games, 1 assist, and that was, of course, the series where they got destroyed by the Anaheim Ducks. 2016, San Jose Sharks. These guys, Los Tiburones. Brent Burns, 24 games, 7 goals, 17 assists, 24 points to win the John Druce Award. And on the lower side of it is Jonathan Quick, who gets the Yashin Award. 1-4 record with an .886 save percentage. Not a terrible save percentage, but by Quick standards, that's low. So Quick gets on there. I don't think he's going to be too upset, because in 2018 he had a pretty good playoffs. 2017, his team didn't, but he did. 2017, Mark Letestu of the Edmonton Oilers. 13 games, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points. Letestu making it look easy. Like, nah, I'm a regular in the NHL, and then didn't happen. Kane and Taves stand out in 2017. That was when the Nashville Predators swept them. Kane and Taves were both held to a goal and an assist in 4 games. Remarkable defense by the Nashville Predators. So they share the award that year, same as Pavelski and Marleau over here. 2018, Riley Smith for the Vegas Golden Knights wins the John Druce Award. 20 games, 5 goals, 17 assists, 22 points. And on the low side, it's Jeff Carter of the LA Kings, 4 games played. And of course, Jonathan Quick in those 4 games had a save percentage as close to perfect as he can get. But when your team's not scoring and Carter's being held off the board as one of many, that's a problem. So, yeah, the LA Kings got swept that year. They just couldn't score on Marc-Andre Fleury. Wasn't going to happen. And then the playoffs we had last year, Ryan O'Reilly wins the John Druce Award, 26 games, 8 goals, 15 assists, 23 points. See if he follows that up this year with another big playoff, or next year, or whenever. Johnny Gaudreau gets the Yashin Award for 1 assist in 5 games last spring. So apologies to Johnny, but it just felt like that was anemic at a time where Calgary really needed him to step up. So there you go. The John Druce and Alexei Yashin Awards, and these will be a regular thing now. So that's why I'm retroactively awarding them as such, and these are my official awards. And you guys can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Again, I poured over a lot of statistics, and there are some star players that had really big years in the playoffs, and when I looked at them, I went, well, yeah, but they had a lot of them. So, or at least they had a few, and sometimes there would be players I looked up where maybe they got knocked out in the first round and only played 6 games, but they had 10 points. So if I saw one later on where they had 25, I'd go, well, yeah, they had 25 in 20 games, but they had 10 in 7 years, so they still had a good playoffs. So I had to do some messing around with it, and like I said, it took a little over 2 hours to put this board together, but I'm proud of it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.